When's the last time somebody with complete undivided attention listened for, 45 minutes or an hour straight and was, only to serve your best interests and maximize your potential? That's the gift of coaching.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast. I'm Kim Skarupski here at Hopkins, and I'm looking at Dr. Brian Clyne from Brown. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to meet you. And this introduction and this guest on the Faculty Factory podcast is due to our dear friend, Dr. Rachel Salas here in Hopkins Neurology. And she highly recommended Brian, said, you have to get him on the podcast. He's brilliant. He's great with coaching and is part of her AOA fellowship. And you coached her. And she said he's definitely a superstar, slam dunk, got to get him on. So Dr. Brian Clyne is a professor of emergency medicine at the Alpert Medical School of Brown University. And there he is also the vice chair for education. So again, Dr. Clyne, thank you, Brian. Thanks for being here. And would you like to say anything else about your position there at Brown and what you do in the emergency department?
Yeah. First, Kim, just please call me Brian. And, Rachel may have oversold me a little bit, but I appreciate the kind introduction. Yeah, my role at Brown, I've been in various educational roles throughout my career, starting in student, running our student clerkship. I was a longtime residency program director, and for the past 7 or 8 years have been serving as vice chair for education, overseeing all of our educational programs and providing support therein. And so that's a little bit about my kind of career, what I do day to day.
Now, how did you get involved in education? Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? I think people are always interested in how people go through their own leadership roles and say, oh, that's the thing for me. Why education as opposed to any other number of areas of expertise? What was it that grabbed you?
Yeah, I think, it coincided for me as a medical student, considering which specialty to choose. I was drawn into emergency medicine for what I had perceived as a really rich teaching environment. I found myself as a student, being pulled in for just teaching opportunities in the ED more so than I had in any other setting. And then, fast forward to during my residency, I think part of my career path towards medical education had a lot to do with the mentors that I saw as a resident. They truly helped me view medical education as a direct extension of patient care and helped me understand the kind of the magnifying and ripple effect that you can have on patient care through education. And that started me on a very, kind of a more inquiry journey. I have to say my first couple of years out of residency, I was very much, doing performing clinical emergency medicine with dabbling in teaching. But then started to make more of a commitment towards actually learning some teaching skills and doing some curriculum development. And then, one thing led to another, and I was asked to start doing more student supervision. And then things kind of, right time, right place. In some ways, the residency director position was open a few years later, and I was able to transition into that role. And so I think, this is maybe a kind of a lesson that I think some of your listeners have probably found, that sometimes we kind of fall backwards or sideways into these educational leadership roles without a ton of preparation and really knowing exactly what we're getting into. But it just, it seems like the right, thing that at the time, and it's consistent with our interests and where we see our career going. And so we kind of jump at them, and many times it works out well, and that's that, we stay on that path. And for me, that was the case.
Well, I love it. Thanks for sharing your story. It's so important that you mentioned, and I'm sure at Brown, like here at Hopkins, you talked about understanding that this was an interest of yours, but then that you had to develop some skill sets. You mentioned exploring the foundations of education and how to build a curriculum and putting rubrics together and really investing in that knowledge base that would really equip you and give you the confidence. And so I'm curious about that. You're seeking that additional training and how you went about fitting that in with your your real job, your day job, and then how you were able to be valued and how Brown values you as an educator and how you were able to be promoted to professor. Was there a story there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the story, the consistent thread there is, seeking opportunities to continuously learn. And for me, it started out by doing things within the emergency medicine community. There's a really strong program director, like many specialties have a program director organization. And through something called CORD, I was able to learn from colleagues, do a lot of collaborative work, get some faculty development on how to manage a program. I ended up pursuing a couple of other, like the Harvard Macy program, I thought was really valuable when you're really trying to understand adult learning theory and how to design a curriculum. And so that was really valuable. And, I feel like I've always been on the lookout for things that would enhance my, without having done an educational master's or fellowship, kind of enhance my street cred as an educator. So, for example, the AAMC has the Medical Education Research Certificate. That's something that I found useful in trying to do some educational research. And then, just kind of constantly on the lookout for development opportunities. How that was valued at Brown. I mean, I think it's been, for me, the pathway to promotion was not meteoric. It was a very slow and steady and kind of plodding experience. And it's something that it took me a long time to probably, embarrassingly, probably longer than others to realize the importance of to be successful. You really got to, in the scholarship realm anyway, you've got to find collaborators with mutual interests. And so it wasn't until, and it's hard because I know many of your listeners have like day jobs where they're doing a lot of administrative and managerial things. So it's hard to translate a lot of the work you're doing into scholarship, but ultimately kind of fell into sync with a group of educators with similar interests and was able to try to get some scholarly productivity, off the ground. So, yeah, I mean, I think, the things that I've noticed about people that are most successful in this realm is, one, they've got an area of focus and they're able to focus. So focus is number one. Two is collaborators, finding a group of people that you can work well with, and then obviously mentorship. And it wouldn't be, none of us would be where we are today without the support of our mentors.
Well, Brian, thanks, first of all, for putting in a plug in for faculty development across the spectrum. You keep it's job security for people like me who do faculty development. Love it. So thank you for endorsing ongoing learning and development. And thank you also for reminding us about focus and how to almost like double dip when you get collaborators and you figure out what your focus is. There's no sense in doing it on your own and being a lone wolf model. That just doesn't work that way on so many levels, not only for efficiency, but also for the sense of the overwhelming burden, sometimes feeling so isolated. I think that the nice benefit is when you have the collaborators, you have a tribe, a team that where you could all win on scholarship that certainly helps the CV and career progression, but it also helps in just the human social connection of being able to share, troubles and hardships and helping each other and boosting each other and encouraging each other. So I think there's so much wisdom in what you're saying is getting collaborators. And then, of course, another kudo to you for promoting scholarship, it's hard to get around that. And when you're in academic medicine, that is kind of the currency of the trade. So there's, again, no sense of doing that alone. You get a bunch of people together and everybody can win on that endeavor. So thank you.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for folks in medical education, they're doing so much, what I call roll up your sleeves, keep the lights on teaching, that they're front and center. They're actually delivering a lot of educational content, but they're very, infrequently stopping and saying, okay, how do I translate what I just did, all that time and effort to, prepare that lecture or whatever, into something that's the currency of promotion, which is presentation or publication. So I think one of the turning points for me, and I think for some other colleagues here at Brown, was actually acknowledging that openly and then forming an education section that is designed to meet regularly and support one another in this exact area. And so just the coming together of our education, we have a lot, like many departments, we have a big department, we got a lot of people doing education. And it was clear in such a large group that there were times where there were a lot of projects where people would have been interested in working together on, but they just simply weren't aware of them. And so, trying to that just the formation of the education section in our regular meetings and the kind of the cadence of it and the focus was something that helped many of us translate our work into scholarship.
Well, before we go into the meat of what you want to talk about, which I can't wait to get to, is I just want to hit this again because you just said something really important again, and that is the formation of an education section. And that is making me think back to Dr. Rachel Salas because she's a Clifton Strengths Inventory trained person. And she talks a lot about strengths. And it sounds to me like what you just said, starting this new section, there's so many people who are stretched so thin, that have so many great ideas, so many gifts and talents, and so many ideas about what to do, for example, to produce scholarship, but just don't have the capacity to put things together. If you find one person who has as one of their gifts, organizing or bridge building, it just takes that one person to say, all right, enough of this. We all know we have these interests. We're all kind of scattered. Let's bring all the troops to the table and let's figure this out. And sometimes that catalyst is just what you need to grab all that energy and harness it and then really direct it. And then boom, you're off and running. So I just wanted to underline what you just said, that sometimes it just takes that one person, and maybe that one person is you, or it's your colleague who's really good at doing that kind of thing. And it doesn't take too much effort to just kickstart that, and you're off to the races. So I just think that's really important. I wanted to make sure everybody heard what you just said.
Yeah, I don't want to take full credit for it. There was a lot of, I would say, mutual recognition among my peers that we would all benefit from a forum where we got together, provided consultation on each other's projects, brainstormed about future ideas. In even some of the sessions, we sit down and actually write. And so, each of these meetings takes a little bit of a different direction, but it's been, it's really helped us generate some productive scholarship.
Exactly. Great job, Brian. So you mentioned something also about mentorship and how important that is. And this is going to get into where we want to talk about today is, for a long time, mentorship was the word of the day, and a lot of publications around mentorship. And it still is very, very important, as we all know, as the literature demonstrates. And yet there's something relatively new that's popped up in academic medicine, maybe not new, but it's been around and it's becoming even more prevalent. So kick off this fun topic of discussion today.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the concept of coaching. And coaching is something that, I don't know if I would call it trendy, but it's certainly front of mind for a lot of people right now. There's more and more being written about it. And I think people are familiar with the idea of, a senior executive working with a coach or a CEO or even from some other industry. But I think it's becoming more and more common for people in the early or middle part of their career in academic medicine to seek coaching. And how does that differ from mentoring, which is, like you said, kind of the traditional model that we think about? And so maybe we could start there with some distinguishing, elements. So, mentoring is often viewed as someone who, the mentor is the expert. They give advice. It's I think conceptually I see it as a little more directive. It's I would say it's hierarchical in some ways, and it's very much about problem solving. And coaching is a little different. Coaching focuses more on the individual, and it's more developmental. It's exploratory. It's more of a partnership, less hierarchical. And it's sort of one of the big distinguishing features to me is, like, in mentoring, it's kind of understood that the mentor has a lot of the answers, and you're there to get them from on whatever topics at hand. And in coaching, sort of the mindset is that the coachee, me, the audience, the individual has the solution. It's just maybe it just needs a little exploration to get there, and it's kind of buried somewhere in between, just slightly below the surface, rather. So like a mentoring conversation, you might hear phrases like, if I were you, I would do this, or what you need to do is this, or that reminds me of a time when that's some of the common phrases you hear in mentoring. Whereas in coaching, you might hear something like, well, how are you seeing the situation? How are you defining this problem? What are you learning in this process? What's an ideal outcome? What impact is this having on you? So there's just like a little bit of a different kind of tone. And that's not to say, I don't mean to imply like mentoring is bad and coaching is good. There's a place along the spectrum for both of these conversations to happen really kind of in the same, almost at the same time. Yeah. So I guess, the idea of coaching is that there is, I think we're very familiar with the idea of the leader having all the answers and kind of doing a lot of telling, whereas coaching is you are the expert in your own life, and it's designed to honor that more so, I think, than the other the other types of conversations we have.
Thanks, Brian. I like the way you describe that, because I'll have conversations with my friends / peers / mentors / coaches, and it's almost become like a joke, an annoying joke, that I'll say, all right, Cindy, please take off your coaching hat and put on your mentoring hat. I just want to know. What to do here. Or vice versa. I'll say, I don't need you to mentor me. I need you to coach me, because I feel like I have it in me, but I'm not quite sure about the right way. So I'll ask someone to be a coach. Don't be my buddy. Don't be my friend. Coach me or mentor me. So it's interesting that the way you described it with those different types of questions, I will also find myself thinking, wait a minute, Kim, are you sliding in the mentoring role, or are you trying to be the coach role? And I too will sometimes preface this with, if you don't mind indulging me, I'd like to put on a little bit of a coaching hat right now, because I suspect that you already know what you want to do, versus I'll say, okay, now I'm going to wear my mentoring hat, because what you're saying reminds me so much of when I was at your stage and I did the same thing. And so that's as you're saying, it's almost, unless you're engaged in a professional coaching relationship, I can see how we can all take the best fruit from all of those kind of relationships. So I like the way you describe the questioning differences. Yeah.
And it's like you said, it can be very fluid. One thing that if you start to, adopt a little bit of more of a coaching mindset and approach to the people you're working with, it can be a little unnerving initially for people who are coming to you saying, wait a minute, like, I want you to, yeah, exactly. I want you to tell me what to do. I came here for your advice. I want you to tell me. And you're sitting there sort of probing in a very non-directive way and trying to get their perspective. It's just not something people are familiar with. So I think on both sides, it requires a little bit of practice and just kind of some open communication.
Yeah, I love it. So how do you do it? So once you and describe or help people understand the differences between mentoring and coaching, then how do you go about doing it? Like, why is Dr. Rachel Salas so over the moon about you and your style? I can't wait to hear about it.
Well, I don't know. Let me just back up a little bit and explain how I even came to coaching. A couple of years ago, I was asked to serve as the interim chair of our department, and it was I'm not sure anyone feels completely ready for stepping into a new role, especially with a lot more responsibility. And so shortly before I started that interim experience, I enlisted the help of a coach. And the first thing I realized is I had no idea what a coach did, because, we'd have these conversations about topics that I would bring, challenges I was having. And she wasn't really telling me the answer. And so I started
but this is the biggest waste of money ever.
But it was also I had been curious about coaching for a while, and having experienced it firsthand, it was just really, I found it empowering when we would have these conversations, and my coach would really help me understand and reframe things. And it's funny, a lot of our conversations weren't about the topic at hand. They were about my underlying assumptions and beliefs and values and things that were, informing my reaction to a problem and how I was seeing it. So she really helped me uncover some blind spots, helped me understand how I was showing up to other people in certain situations. Mm-hmm. And so after a while, I was finding tremendous value out of it. I thought to myself, what is this person like? What are they doing to me that I might then, add to others? Because a big part of my job is trying to develop people. And so I became really curious about the coaching skills and concepts and ended up pursuing a formal certification program and then completing a requisite number of hours of coaching to become certified. And so I'm still kind of at the tail end of that process right now, just to get certified through a specific certification body. But suffice to say, like after that firsthand experience that I started realizing, like all the kind of leadership development work that I had done in various courses or programs or workshops over the years really didn't compare to the unique value of that one-on-one individualized coaching. So I found it really powerful, and I learned a ton about myself. And so when you say how do you do it, like I think that maybe the best way to describe that would be to talk about some of like the mindsets that like you bring to the table as a coach. And I guess the first thing is that you're coaching the person, not necessarily the topic. So, you might come to me with a particular issue, Kim. I don't necessarily need to know all the details or the content, but I'm coaching how your perspective on that problem. And so that's where we kind of focus our energy. The other mindset I think a lot of coaches bring is this idea that, you honor the person as being, creative and resourceful and whole and trust in their capability to see through to the solution.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of self-management as a coach. It's trying to make sure that you're present and you're agile and you're always curious. So yeah, those are some of the things that I feel like are important mindsets to bring to the table. Yeah,
I like that. The person as a whole and recognizing and starting from that assumption, versus sometimes we think of the assumption ladders that we kind of zip through and then come to conclusions and cherry pick the data we want. But a healthy assumption, if you will, would be, all right, let's start at this common assumption. This basic assumption is that you are strong, you are capable, you are trained, you are skilled, you are knowledgeable, you're successful, you are this already. And let's see how we can look for opportunities to grow or see or uncover, as you said, these blind spots or uncover hidden gems inside of you that you didn't know were there or you forgot were there. So that is what I think is a beautiful gift that we as coaches can give to people, reminding them that you have it. It's in there. When we're going to find it and we're going to polish that up.
That's a great way to say it.
Well, I also like when people ask me, what's the difference between mentoring and coaching? I try to remind myself that I think, okay, past, present, future. Past, present, future. If you really need to dig into the past, that's a therapist. Mm-hmm. If you really are in the present, the here and now, and you need someone to tell you, I need to know how to do this and that and the other, that's a mentor. If you're thinking about the future, how do I get to, how do I become, that's a coach. So I kind of think of past, present, future, therapy, mentoring, and coaching. And as you said, Brian, doesn't mean that all that can't be working in tandem, parallel tracks, because we are complete whole people. And we're always kind of doing these recursive, non-recursive looping, feeding into. Exactly. So I think it's such a valuable contribution to our development is adding coaching. So tell me more about the ways that if some people maybe don't want to or can't, they're saying, okay, great, Kim and Brian, what are you telling me? That I have to go either become a coach or get a coach? What if people don't have the time to become a coach and be certified like you and me?
Yeah, I think that's a great area to focus on, because there are some foundational, I call them coach-like skills that don't necessarily require a huge investment of, going and, doing a certification course and et cetera. And And so and maybe for the rest of our time, we could talk about just like 3 core skills. And the first is, it's sometimes called co-creating the relationship, which sounds like a haughty thing, but it's really like a kind of designing how we're going to work together and how we're going to interact. And this is something that we could probably all benefit from in many of our working relationships or the teams that we're on, stopping to say, even if it's a group that's been working together for a while, okay, what's working here and how can we have a more successful interaction? So a typical discussion around, designing the relationship would start by just setting expectations, establishing norms. And it's almost like you imagine, okay, there's you, Kim, and there's me. And then there's this third entity kind of floating out in there between us. And it's called the relationship. And we kind of point to it and say, well, what do we want? Like, what does that look like if it's going to be successful and productive and effective? Like, what do we want the terms of that relationship to look like? And we're both responsible for creating it. It's about ground rules and logistics. And so some questions that might come out of that experience with a colleague or a coworker would be things like, what do you need from me? What do you expect from me? What are my responsibilities and your responsibilities? How frequently do we want to meet and be updated? How do you prefer to receive feedback? How should we let each other know if something's not working? If conflict arises, how do we want to resolve that? Like, things that seem so on their face, like easy to say, but we, think about how many times our work relationships or, whatever it may be, a relationship with a colleague or just they kind of go awry because we haven't had this kind of setting of the ground rules. So, and I say this in context of like, starting a new relationship, but the truth is, I have a colleague who says, every relationship is a living, breathing thing. And if every living, breathing thing creates waste, then sometimes you got to clean up your waste. And so, this redesigning or co-creating can happen at any stage of a working relationship.
A garbage day. It's garbage day. We got to take out the garbage.
Yeah.
Brian, I love that. It's so simple and yet profound. And as you were saying those questions to me, like, well, what do you expect of me? Well, what are the boundaries? What do you want from me? What do you need from me? I was kind of like sitting here going, that is so easy, and how it can be applied to so many relationships in the lab, in the clinic, in the classroom, in the home, at family reunions, during holiday, all those things, with co-authors. Oh my gosh. It's so
great example. Yeah.
So simple, but so important. And when you rush over that, like you just expressed on your face with co-authors, how many times you send them an email and just say, give me feedback. And like, well, wait a minute, what is it you expect from me? When, what time, what level of feedback? So the basic questions can have such profound implications. So thanks for sharing something so amazing, co-creating relationship and just setting expectations and norms. I love it.
Yeah. So that's the first step in that kind of conscious conversation helps to create safety and trust in any relationship. So with that, and that's something that we can practice. I think most of us can envision, a relationship that we would benefit from some either taking out the trash or a quick redesign. So we this probably wouldn't have to look too far for an opportunity to practice that.
Gosh, it's an easy thing to do with so many important, like I said, implications. I can think of 100 things right off the bat that we think, well, we talked about this. I mean, we talked about this last year. I mean, my colleague or my staff person, they know exactly what to expect from me. Do they really? When did you have that last conversation? So you mean to say that you haven't changed, she hasn't changed, it hasn't changed, life hasn't changed, that you all expect that everybody knows what they're doing and those things are static and there's been no pandemic and nothing has changed anything? Okay, continue deluding yourself. Get you out of the garbage dump.
Oh, so true.
Oh, gosh. So what other coach-like skills do you share?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is something that you may have heard in other settings, but it really the focus of the coach is really listening in a deep and authentic way And I think about these three levels of listening, level one being the most basic, where we're oftentimes we're listening to respond. How many times have we been in that position of not really listening, but thinking about what we're going to say? It's a lot of it is like self-referential thought around, I'm listening to you tell me about your vacation, but all I can, I just want to think about my vacation and tell you about it. So it's pretty low level of sort of, it's not a very empathic type of listening. It's very, like I said, it can be judgmental, self-referential, and listening to respond. So, and we do, and we do that. We can't all be intensely listening all the time. But with practice, we can get to a higher level. Level two is where we focus on things like data, information. We focus on words and facts. And, I think a lot about this, Kim, if you're a clinician and you're taking a history, it's the duration, location, character, quality, it's like I just kind of gathering the facts around the illness or symptoms that you're having. And there's a role for that. I mean, people want to, they want you to understand, but true, like deep listening, I would call like level three, where you're simultaneously observing all the nonverbals. You're looking at the emotions that people are exhibiting. You're looking for resonance and dissonance in their voice, their body language, trying to listen carefully from some assumptions that they may be, revealing in their language. And so, some examples, like a level one conversation might be you saying, "Oh, I had a similar experience like that." And level two would be saying, I'm listening and I'm hearing that, the important pieces here are, the facts, and you go on and state them. But level three listening is these what we call sensing statements. I'm sensing confusion, or I'm noticing something in your voice there shifted, or what am I hearing there? It sounds like frustration. Or so it's like really trying to deeply engage with people, and that's something that it requires practice. There's no doubt. It's a skill that requires time, attention, and practice.
That level three reminds me of listening between the lines. You say you read between the lines, listen between the lines.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
And I like how you describe level 1, 2, 3. And I also want to ask for your perspective on, I imagine you're going to say, well, Kim, is not that it's bad, because right away I looked at my little sticky note from my coaching training, which has a big WAIT, wait. And the acronym, it's an acronym from Ellen Moore, who's a coach, who stands for Why Am I Talking? It's to remind me to wait, Kim, shut up, because I tend to talk a lot. But I imagine you're going to tell me that, yes, levels of listening, it's important that we get to level 3 and really try to be more empathic and empathetic. However, the listening to respond and getting the data, as you pointed out, are important. And I'm imagining the listening to respond when you're telling me about your vacation, and I want to say, oh my gosh, that reminds me of my vacation. There is a time and place for that, and that might be in relationship building. Mm-hmm. Because I would want perhaps the patient or my resident or my mentee to feel like, okay, you get me. Oh, we are similar. We are same. That basic human need to feel like I see you, you see me. We are not too different. So I can see. I tend to do that, but I'm guessing you would tell me, well, all right, but then you move and you have an awareness of, let's stop doing that. You've done that. Now you're building a relationship, and let's get deeper and progress up the ladder of listening. Am I right? Something like that?
Yeah, no, I think some of it depends on the context. I mean, clearly there's a role for, these levels exist for a reason. We're human, and we can be in level 1. Level 2 is, I think, a lot about the work that we do in terms of patient care is level 2. But yeah, I think in some ways it depends on the context of the conversation. You don't always have to be so dialed in if you're having a relatively, social or informal conversation with someone. I'm
imagining also, like when I would start a coaching relationship with somebody, say the first time I meet them and they start talking, I'm not going to, with the third sentence that I might say, Brian, I sense some dismay. You'd be like, wait a minute, weirdo. I just met you 30 seconds ago, and now that you're all woo-wooing me, like, wait a minute. So I can see that there is also a progression. as you build a relationship around, as you mentioned earlier, safety and trust, that's part of a normal, natural evolution.
Exactly. Yeah. I just want to draw an analogy here to the clinical environment. I'm an emergency physician, so we meet people often only once, and it can be intense, and there's some time pressure, and to build trust in a short period of time is not easy. Mm-hmm. So I think the default is to kind of get into level 2 and say, okay, let's just gather the data, let's get the HPI and the ROS and the but sometimes we fail to acknowledge, and this is something that I'm continuing to work on in my practice, is paying really close attention to those subtleties, those nuances during the communication, where their body language, patient's body language may sort of belie an underlying issue, and then start to ask, like, instead of just the facts, saying things like, well, I think I understand what's going on here, but like, how is this, what impact are all these things having on you? And then that's when patients start to realize, okay, they really are trying to get me here. They're I'm feeling heard and acknowledged. So the more you can practice level 3, and I think there's an opportunity for many people who see patients to try to work on that every day.
Any other coach-like skills you can impart to the faculty factory audience?
Yeah, the last piece I would want to get into is this idea of questioning, because what I experienced in my coaching was someone who was asking a lot of provocative and somewhat just challenging questions, because they really kind of get you between the eyes, and there was no easy out, because the questions she often asked me did not have like yes or no responses. They required some really deep thought. And so I learned later about this concept of powerful questions, and these are typically open-ended, short, either present or future focused questions. They're simple and clean. There's no runway to them. I think a lot of us are guilty of kind of setting up our questions. They're very invitational and expansive, and there's no pretext or justification. Many of these questions start with the words what or how. Mm-hmm. So some examples would be, if I share a topic with you that's a challenge I'm having, Kim, you might say, well, what's important about that? How are you defining success in this situation? What's another way to look at this? Imagine an ideal outcome. Describe what that looks like, or something like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you ready to commit to doing X, Y, or Z? So you see, these are things that make you really stop and think. They don't let you off by saying, they're not yes or no kind of questions. And so and they're not like either or they're not loaded with assumptions. They're just really kind of open-ended. So I think practicing using powerful questions is something that, we can do with everyone that we interact with on a daily basis. And it leads to just, I think, better conversation and sometimes richer insights for people that you're trying to work with.
And you're right, Brian, because when you ask a real question and you actually then shut up and and be there with them, that says something to me. Like, Brian's not going anywhere. He's clearly not going to follow up he's not going to, fire more questions at me. He has asked me a deep question, and he's going to sit back and he's going to wait for me and give me time and space to answer that. And that opens up to me a broader a range of possibilities, because not only am I trusting you that you're with me, you're not going to say, hello, Kim, anytime now, we got to go. It's time that you are dedicating to me. It's almost sacred. And then you're with me. You're like saying, okay, I'm watching you think, I'm here with you. Take as much time as you want. And that really just, in today's, at least workday, we never do those things, right? It's the drive-by, back when humans used to walk by each other, the water cooler, the coffee machine is, how you doing? And there was only one answer to that. Pretty good. All right, whatever. Nobody really wants the real answer ever. You don't want the person to stop you and light up into this, that, and the other. It's that superficial kind of questioning. So you're right. The deep, provocative questions, and then the silence and the stillness and being comfortable with that silence and finding comfort in discomfort really allows someone to explore. And so, that's a unique thing happens in a relationship. And I like how you point out, we can do that with anybody. Can you imagine with your patients and with the staff in your clinic and with your colleagues and with the trainees in the lab, when you actually ask a real question and stand there and give them space and look at them like, whoa, this Brian's serious. He really, this guy's not leaving, man. He's asked me a question and sat down and hunkered down for 20 minutes. That is valuable. What an investment in a relationship and a person.
Yeah. That's a great way to say it. And it kind of reminds me, Kim, of, when people ask me about like, what is the most valuable part of being coached? And, it's like a million things and a million specific like topics that I can think of that I've benefited from. But it really, if nothing else, like the idea, like when's the last time somebody with complete undivided attention and focus on you, listened for 45 minutes or an hour straight and was only to serve your best interests and maximize your potential? That's the gift of coaching, is having somebody that is willing to do that and is able to do that effectively, whether it's, like you said, through silence or other tools. It's a profoundly unique and I think rewarding experience.
You're so right, Brian, because even take out our daily jobs and our lives in academic medicine, where, what do you mean? I've got my annual review. That's almost an hour together. But as your department director, even interim Dr. Brian Clyne, were you really investing in the career development of that faculty member? Sometimes it's how many RVUs, how many times on Epic are you closing your cases? Are you doing this? How much grant monies is you bringing in? How many manuscripts are you publishing? And it's more like, because then what is that going to do for me, the director? Or what is that going to do for me, the mentor? Or what is it going to do for me, your wife or your partner? Or it's what am I getting out of you? So yeah, there's anything I'm thinking about, or dad or mom. I mean, the kids, it's all about what can I get from you? And I think many of us, our faculty members, especially on the heels of all the global pandemic and all the nonsense happening, it's giving. We are depleted, just energy and life being sucked out of us. And you are so right, Brian. Coaching is probably the only, maybe I'm thinking, maybe if your religious leader or your pastor or your rabbi does that, but that is so rare to have somebody just caring about you and not what can I get from you.
Yeah. That probably leads into my last point, Kim, is like, right now there's this epidemic of burnout. There's a lot of disengagement among a lot of healthcare professionals. And there is some emerging evidence that suggests coaching can be an antidote, or at least mitigate some of those feelings of burnout, disengagement, people finding, a lack of joy or purpose in their work. And so there's been a few small studies that have been published just within the past couple of years, looking and mainly in the primary care physician population. And I'm sure I don't pretend to have an exhaustive list of publications that I've referred to on this, but I think increasingly, I guess the point is, one of the frustrations you hear about from providers is, just not feeling, seen, heard, acknowledged, and coaching. I can see how it directly provides that, and so it's not going to solve the EMR, but it can certainly, it can certainly help you become more aware of your, responses and your reactions to certain situations, and for that, I think it has a place in among other things, treating some of the symptoms we're seeing of burnout, some of the burnout in providers.
Yeah, thanks. I hadn't thought about that, Brian, for referring back to the data that demonstrate the value of coaching. And so you're reminding me about a recent episode with Dr. Harriet Hoff, and she put together with her colleague a coaching program, group coaching program, which we a couple months ago just started implementing here at Hopkins as well, group coaching. Mm-hmm. Because when you think, here at Hopkins, we've got over, 5,000 faculty, full and part-time faculty, to do coaching one-on-one would be quite an investment. So we're trying to build that coaching in a group context capacity. And I think with the value you're saying, in addition to a lot of other value, is that the message is for leaders of institutions out there. Think about coaching and coaching programming and thinking about that as a resource for your faculty members. And along the opposite end of the continuum at the micro level, at the person level, think about adopting some, as you point out, Brian, coach-like skills. So even if we as faculty members can't get coaching or become a coach, minimally we can embrace some of these skills that are coach-like. So I think it's an incredible value that you pointed out and elevated and contributed to the important conversation around coaching.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, folks, this has been Dr. Brian Clyne at Brown, the Alpert Medical School at Brown University, Vice Chair for Education, Professor, Emergency Medicine. And if you want to learn more about coaching or be coached by Dr. Brian, you'd email him at brian.clyne, CLYNE, at brownphysicians.org. And that will be on his podcast episode blurb on the Faculty Factory. Brian, any last words for the Faculty Factory global community?
Oh, I just want to thank you, Kim, and it's a privilege to be part of this podcast. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks everybody. If you want to be on the podcast, just email me at facultyfactorykim. That's one big long word, facultyfactorykim@gmail.com. And if you have a guest or someone you think should be on, just like Rachel Salas said, we need to have Dr. Brian Clyne, and now we know why. Do the same thing. Just send them our way. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more. Get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.